Hey guys, it is Webinar Wednesday. I am so happy to have you here. This is Ronnie with the Simple Team, and we have our wonderful CEO, Mr. Brian Snyder. Man, how are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks a lot for having me, Ronnie. Appreciate it. Ready to get into this, man. So I know I missed out last week, not being able to do Webinar Wednesday. You and Randy took it, and so I'm ready to get back in the saddle today, man.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Now, unrelated. Now, for those of you who have kids, if you look in the background of Brian, the first thing I think of is Zootopia in that bridge. So I'm just anybody that have kids automatically know what that scene is. So I just feel like I'm in a cartoon watching Zootopia. Anyway,
I'm ready to start traveling. So I need to be in a jungle and in a hot, warm, tropical climate versus it's starting to get cold here in India. I don't know if I like that or not.
I know, right? I know. So what we're going to talk about this webinar Wednesday is a couple of things. One, we're going to talk a little bit about, just the market and kind of what we're seeing. And then based on that, some conversations and stuff that I've had with a lot of wholesalers this week. I feel like this week I've talked to so many different wholesalers, been on different walkthroughs with them, talked to them some problem areas. And so we just thought that this would be a good time to kind of bring those conversations here to share with you. Hopefully you can gain some information and some knowledge, and also, maybe some ways, things to correct to kind of help you in your real estate investing business this week. Okay. So first things first, yes. We're in election year. We got a lot going on. People are still kind of selling houses, unsure about things. But Brian, you have the opportunity to talk with some of the best and top real estate investors in the nation. We know we're seeing here in Indianapolis, but what are other real estate investors kind of reporting in their markets?
Yeah, well, I think it's something that we're starting to see is things are starting to open up a little bit. And I can just tell, even just from your conversations I've had with you and what you just said, you've had, multiple conversations with other wholesalers this week. Like, seems like wholesalers have more deals. So when you see that activity pick up, that can mean a bunch of different things. Basically just the market in general, the inventory opening up a little bit for everybody. So when I think that there's a couple different factors that I see within that. So, number one, that buyers are being a little bit more careful with what they are looking for. So for example, just even on our end, where a lot of times we don't even have to we don't have to email blast out a property or send it to our buyers list. So we can just connect a buyer with it right away. Like, hey, do you want this deal? Or we're going to send it to somebody else. Yep, I'll take it and stuff. So we've had to email blast out a couple properties. Same thing. I see that activity from wholesalers. What that means is that buyers are not being as on top of it and things like that because there's a little bit more inventory. So really what that means is the buyers are being a little more careful. Sellers are starting to want to sell a little bit more. So as the inventory is picking up. So what I really attribute that to is and this happens every 4 years, we get closer to an election, people are going to freak out a little bit. So oh, I got to do something before November 3rd. So buyers are thinking, hey, I got to be a little bit careful. I got to figure out what I want to do with my money. I got to make sure I'm buying at the right price. I got to make sure everything's going to be okay after November 3rd happens. Sellers, same thing of oh, wait, maybe I should, is the market going to crash after the election? Do I need to sell my house now? I need to go ahead and get an offer on it now. I need to try to get under contract, those types of things. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here in Indy. That's what people are saying kind of throughout the nation, other investors that I'm talking to. But in other words too, along with that, the market is still just super hot anywhere and everywhere. So a lot of things are selling. A lot of things are selling for prices higher than what we would have been able to sell last year at this time. So, so there's two things that you kind of market's super hot, cash in on while you can, make sure you're getting as many deals as you can because there's deals out there. There's good profits to be made and those types of things. But then I also see people being a little bit more sellers pushing to try to get some things sold before the election. I also see buyers kind of pulling back a little bit more, being just a little bit more conservative, wanting to do a little bit more due diligence than they were 2 weeks ago. So that's just kind of something I've noticed over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, gotcha. No, that's really great feedback. And I've had some of those same conversations with some wholesalers that have been trying to do a couple of things in different markets, which is all has been good. But some of that conversation has also ended up with me doing some walkthroughs and even just conversating even more with some newer wholesalers I haven't. And one of the things that come up is as they're talking with sellers are informed and they are like, okay, well, do you have proof of funds? That's been a big question that's come up in the wholesale community now because sellers seem to be more informed. And one of the things I've seen is that sometimes wholesalers are submitting proof of funds or a form of proof of funds but it isn't accurate, and it's almost kind of like falsified. So, Brian, what would you advise when it comes to proof of funds and wholesalers and how to get around that, or even just deal with it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm 100% always going to advocate for doing things the right way and being
Right.
honest with what you need to do. So if you have legit buyers that, even can provide you proof of funds for what they need and things like that, that's one thing. But I know there's there's documents out there now that you can like research and basically be like, it's a fake proof of funds that you can basically print off and give to somebody. I'm 100% never going to be like for that type of thing. That's not the right way to do things. You're being dishonest, but also you're setting yourself up to fail or get in trouble. So
Yeah.
can it work? Yeah, probably. You might be okay with it, but does that make it right? It does not. I always worry about, not what can happen with this deal, but what can happen to my reputation, what can happen to my business, what can happen down the road. All it takes is one lawsuit, one claim, one thing to happen within your business to crush it. I see it happen. I've seen it happen to friends of mine, that, just one little thing goes wrong with one deal that can, tear their business open and, really kind of put, something a little bit more than a Band-Aid can fix and stuff. But, wholesalers already have in some cases already have a bad reputation. But then kind of putting that out there is like, hey, I'm gonna lie to you right now because I'm gonna tell you that I'm gonna buy your house. That's one lie. You're not gonna buy their house. You have buyers, you have investors that work with you. You're the middleman. That's what your job is. That's what, and that's how you approach it. Is like, this is what I'm good at. I'm good at connecting houses with buyers, with my investors. That's what I'm going to do for you. I am going to work day and night until I get your house, until we're going to get your property under contract and I have a perfect buyer for you. That's what you're doing. That's what you can stake your reputation on if you do not have the funds to buy that house. So number one, that you're putting that lie out there, just like, hey, I'm the one that's going to buy your house. I'm the investor. I buy houses for cash when you don't have the cash. But then putting another lie on top of that of, hey, I'm going to give you this piece of paper. So number one, it's a document. You're handing over proof that you're lying. That's even worse. It's not just a conversation at that point. So they have evidence to go against you if something does happen. But basically, when that does happen, that you cannot provide the actual funds to, close on a property if it comes down to it. And it's something that I do not, I don't advocate for that. I'm 100% against that. You have to make those decisions all the time within your business of, hey, what can I make money with, or what's right, and what do I want to make? If you want to make this a business, you got to do what's right, not only what's right, but also what's going to give you the longevity to go, down the road with it and make a living out of it and provide for your wife or provide for your family, provide for yourself. Those are the things you need to consider, and it's really easy. And there's that seems like something very small, but I know, I've been around this business enough that it's a very slippery slope. That when you lie about that one thing, or falsify that one thing, or inflate, embellish, equivocate that one thing, it's really easy to just continue to do it. So I'd say 100% be careful of that. Your reputation is everything in this business, and that's one way to ruin a reputation really, really quick. It's also one pretty easy way to have a lawsuit put against you, because you're saying you're putting this property under contract, you're telling them that you're the buyer, you show them proof of funds, you better be able to buy it. You better hope it gets sold and that you can buy that, because if not, they do have a right to go after you for it.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I remember working with a seller one time, and she wanted everything. She wanted my name, my address, my home address, phone number, everything, just so she can go and try to trace it against the Attorney General's office website to see if there are any pending lawsuits against me to try to check that. I'm telling you, you don't want that, because there are sellers out there that care that much and they don't want to be jerked around. So always be integral with your with how you're doing things and what you're doing. To that point, another conversation that I had this week was about working with realtors. We've had a couple of recent situations where I actually had a direct seller call me, and she said, "Hey, look, my house is listed. I've already talked to my realtor. I need an offer. I need this. I need to close. So and we kind of worked through that. But just asking the question for newer wholesalers, what would you advise be the best way to work with the realtor in their market?
Same advice, be honest. So that's that's the number one thing that it comes down to. And it's funny how many of those decisions kind of come back to that phrase of just be honest with what you're doing. So let's say a property is, it's on the market and it is listed. You can get it under contract. You can work with a realtor. That is okay. But you still need to be honest of like, hey, I'm going to, basically what I work with multiple investors. I think I have a good investor for this, and going about it that way. So, and then you always talk about too, realtors will work with a wholesaler, especially if they get the whole commission versus half of it if you're not another, realtor on the other side. So there's some things that you can go back and forth with. And there's some things you can negotiate, and there's some terms in there that you can work with that might even help you to work with a realtor. So know that and kind of know the ins and outs of that. But, don't go in there and just say like, oh yes, I'm looking at, I'm pre-qualified. I want to buy it, blah, blah, blah. Seems like one of the hot things right now is I've seen a lot here in Indy where a house goes on the market and wholesalers are getting the property under contract like day one. Like they're going to be like, hey, I'm going to give you an offer right now for that property at your list price. And then they're shopping it out there and stuff. As a buyer of someone that, buys 300 houses a year, if I look on there and say, well, if a wholesaler sends me a deal and then I see that it's listed, I'm not going to go through that wholesale. That's like, that turns me off right away. Basically like, oh, I can just buy it, off the market. So I can wait out your contract or something if it, especially if they're trying to inflate it, that $50,000 to $100,000. Somebody did that last week. They had a property under contract. It was on the market for $50,000 and they sent it to me for $150,000. Like, no, it was worth $150,000 anyway. But it's just one of those things that I see of like, hey, you don't know the area that you're working in. You don't know how to work with this. So it's one of those things is, like you said, Ronnie, being integral, being honest and things. There's definitely ways that wholesalers can work with realtors. Comes back to being honest, but also just comes back to, making sure that you're not just getting something under contract to have a contract. You're getting something under contract to be able to connect a buyer with it. That like, oh, this house is worth $100,000. I'm going to get it under contract for $100,000. You're not going to sell it for $100,000. You need to get under contract for 60 and then sell it for 70. Like that's the whole premise of wholesaling and what it is. So that you're not just getting things under contract, that you are getting under contract that you have a buyer for that you can connect it with, and doing things that way. So that's got to be your goal. That's got to be your mindset. That's what you got to work towards. That's why, on the other hand, we talk all the time about getting things under contract is not the most important part of the business. The most important part of the business is having the buyers to take that property too. It's been super easy lately because we've had Facebook, and you can put deals on Facebook and people buy them, but they still need to be able to do diligence. They still need to be able to answer the questions that come behind that property. So build your buyers list up, work with them, know what they want, what the price points are, what their criteria is, so you can have those properties to connect them with.
Yep. No, that's really good. That's really good information there. So what I want to move to next is I did a walkthrough, and this happens, but I did a walkthrough with the wholesaler the first time out, and we were kind of just going elementary over the numbers, and I felt like the numbers were kind of inflated as far as what the seller wanted. And so, we walked the property, looked at it and talked, and then, I just reconfirmed with the seller because we kind of worked with it together. The seller said, hey, I need, $250,000 for these 3 pieces of property. And so, I had a conversation with the wholesaler. It's like, look, we're really about to hurt their feelings. We're really, really about to hurt their feelings. And he was like, well, I feel like we can give them more. I was like, no. I said, this area is, we're going to be south of $100,000. And so we took time just to kind of talk with the director seller together. And it was, it was a very difficult conversation for them to sit through because they wanted to perform and give the seller what they wanted. But the issue with this property is the area that it was in. I mean, literally, the train tracks is what separated, and maybe 2 blocks is what separated, being able to get, maybe closer to asking price, basically to, almost getting the offer on half of that. And granted, the seller was motivated, but, just delivering that hard truth of it's not what we can deliver, to you. But, they were very gun-ho, and still, after I got off the phone with them, they still went and tried to offer and get the house under contract at the asking price. So to that, my question is, what would you advise, a wholesaler that's really, really motivated, but they just want to maybe overpromise, to the sellers. What would you say to that? How would they get out of that? What to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough dance. It's the toughest thing, especially if you're a people person. I mean, Ronnie,
Yeah.
you have one of the biggest hearts, of anybody I know, and I'm that way as well. Like, I want to help people. That's in our nature. That's what we want to do. So when somebody's asking, $250,000 for a property, and you say like, I can only give you $100,000, that's crushing. That's not a fun conversation. It's not a good conversation. But being able to set it up and be able to do it correctly is key, and knowing how to do that. A couple things along with this is knowing that there are other things that the sellers need other than the price, or things that they want other than the price. So if this seller's in that situation of like, yeah, they say they want $250,000, you're going to talk to them. You're going to let them know that like, hey, I can't do that. And there's multiple reasons for this. And you can explain it to them, you give them proof, and you can tell that to them. And if they want that, they can definitely go after it. They can list it. They can do whatever they need to. But what else? It always comes down to, what else can you find out about that seller? What else that seller want other than the money? Do they need the money now because they need to move tomorrow? Okay, I understand. You need to move tomorrow. That's something else you need to do. You're moving out of state, or you need to move in with your mother. You need to go anywhere. Okay, you need to be out of this house. You need to sell this within a week because you need to move. That's the other thing that they need. I can't give you the money, but I can give you what you need. I can't allow you to move. Okay, right. It's going to be at a cheaper price. So just knowing those things, and there's going to be multiple things. And that's what good wholesalers can do, is find out what those other things are, because there might be a list of, 4 or 5 things that seller really wants. And you might not be able to give them price, but can you give them the other 3 to 4 things and say, hey, I can give you this. I can help you with this. I can do this. I can't just meet you here, and there's going to be some other thing. It might be complete opposite. Hey, I can give you the price, but maybe I can't, or maybe it has to do with a tenant, or maybe it has to do, there's some other things that can always be going on with the property. So it's always, those are things that you need to take a look at, and like realizing that money's only part of the equation. There's terms involved. There's other conditions involved. There are other things that seller needs. They're in that situation because something happened in their life. There's something going on. If it was just as easy as like, oh, I just need to sell it, I can put it on the market, it's good to go. That's fine. That's everybody's case. Everybody has the opportunity to that, but there's other circumstances of why that person called you versus doing that. So finding out what those other things need. Maybe it's speed. Maybe it's just there's something funky going on. Maybe they're, whatever. Maybe finding out those other things. You might be able to deliver on some things, but might not be able to deliver on the price. Is tough stuff. But I think it also comes down to practicing and practice having those conversations. The best thing a wholesaler can do is just cold call, so many times. Do cold calling just nonstop when you're first getting started, just because you're going to hear no, you're going to hear a lot of curse words, you're going to hear a lot of just random stuff, because you have to be able to take that, but you also have to be able to deliver bad news to where like, oh, you want $200,000? I'm sorry, I'm only going to give you 100 for this. It's a tough conversation, but it's just being able to get the practice, working with somebody to kind of have that conversation as well, learning the tips and tricks behind how to deliver that information. One of the things I like to do is, some really good advice is, that seller wants $250. Before I even go look at it, before I even get pictures, I got to qualify it. I got to make sure it makes sense for me to even go out and see it. Or even for me to get an offer on it. And, I might say like, hey, I'm sorry, like you want $250,000. If I go out and see this, I might be at $100,000 to $150,000. Is it worth me coming out? Is it worth me giving you the offer? One of Ronnie's favorite things, Ronnie's really good at this. And one of the things that Ronnie likes to teach too, to a lot of people that we work with, is going negative. And what that means, that doesn't mean insult them. It doesn't mean, it means that you're letting them know, it's like, I'm sorry, you want $250,000 for this house. You don't even want to hear my offer. I don't want to insult you. I'm not going to give it to you. I'm really, really sorry. I think it's best if you kind of, maybe you can list it. Maybe you can find somebody else who wants to do it, but you don't want to hear my offer. It's going to be considerably lower than what you want, than what you need. I understand your situation, but I'm not even going to give you my offer. You say it a few times, the end of that conversation, that person's going to be saying, no, it's okay, Brian, give me the offer. I want to know it. They're going to ask you for it. So when you give them that low offer, they know it's going to be low. They know that. They might still not like it. They're going to be insulted by it. That's fine. But you've softened that blow for them. So really getting your reps in, practicing those conversations, being ready for it, having it in your repertoire goes very, very far.
Yep. So like I said, I mean, it's been a really good week of just kind of giving the same information, work with other wholesalers, from California to Chicago, Florida, just having a good time just building that community. One of the last things that I want to kind of leave again with just being integral. This is almost kind of like a part 2 to last week's about deals to avoid. Just want to tell this story. So I got a call from a guy. Seemed really great, having a good time, talking on the phone. He seemed to kind of have an exit plan about where he was going. After he sold his house, he had pretty good context of it. We set up the walkthrough. Once I get to the walkthrough, there's a lady there. And I said, hi, ma'am, kind of help. She said, I didn't know who you were, but I heard that my son was trying to sell this house. And then she began to tell me that, he has a disease that he might try to sell this house, but he can't sell it. And she has the power of attorney, and she said she won't sign off on it. And she said, I understand he sounds good, but he is not all there to be able in the ability to sell the house. And I remember looking at the house, looking at the outside, I was licking my chops like, oh, this is going to be a slam dunk. But again, just about to being integral, doing what's right. Sometimes there's deals you just have to walk away from, and this is one of those moments, yesterday I said, you know what, just have to walk away because it's not what's best for the totality of everything and everyone involved. And remember, in this wholesale business, you want to always create win-win situations for both your sellers, both yourself and your end buyers. Okay. So with that, thank you guys for joining us on this webinar Wednesday, and we will see you next week.
Later, guys. Thanks.